Today we have on the show Tepper School of Business at Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh, PA. And on this 126th episode, we're going to learn what you can expect from the top-ranked business degree at CMU, what life is like at a world-class campus in Pittsburgh, PA, and just what a Tepper MBA can do for your career. Be sure to click subscribe for tons of free tips and to get up close and personal with business schools from all around the world. I'm your host today, Eric Lucrezia, joined by my co-host Krithika Srinivasan. And today we have three guests joining us today from CMU. J.R. McGrath, who's the Executive Director of Admissions for the MBA. We have Rukayat Muse-Ariyoh, who is an alum of the full-time MBA program, and Hanisha Dewan, who's a current MBA student in the second year program. How's everyone doing today?
We're doing awesome, Eric. Thank you for having us. We're excited to be here and talk all about Tepper.
Yes, and looks like we have a little bit of a technical glitch, but we're gonna get through this. So listen, everyone, welcome to MBA Waves. Let's talk about what's new and exciting at Tepper. JR, why don't you get us starting off for this part of the episode?
Yeah, so I think we're in an exciting time here. Just as every business school, you are always assessing and trying to ensure that you are doing what is needed in the future and being cutting edge. A couple of things to highlight of what's going on now. We are in the middle of a curriculum review for our core curriculum. So in ensuring that we're always doing what is going to be needed in those next few years at the start of your MBA career. We are also doing a strategic plan. So this is where we invite every different stakeholder from the business school, current students, alumni, career partners, etc., and really shaping what those next 5 years at Tepper are going to focus on. And lastly, one of the areas that we spent a tremendous amount of time on recently is our community, and in particular around the diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging space. We hired our inaugural Associate Dean of DEIMB, and in particular, not only is that person leading what's going to be happening within our community, but also on that academic side. So how are you bringing all of these newer concepts into the classroom, into case studies, into engaged learning? So for us, we're really excited about what's happening here now and how we're leading into the future.
Excellent. I love that. And, with all our guests, we invite anyone who wants to jump in anytime. Feel free, Hanisha, you have something to add to that. If not, we'll jump to the next question. We can always play it by ear. It's a conversation on MBA Waves.
No, absolutely. I covered it perfectly.
Okay.
So when it comes to Carnegie Mellon, I always think of like the cool stuff that you all do, especially the engineering school and all the other sciences and tech, and of course, more recently, AI. So how has CMU shaped the kind of MBA program that Tepper delivers?
Yes, maybe I'll take the macro then. Hanisha or Rukayat, I'd love you to give the student perspective on this as well. But overall at CMU, we very much believe in interdisciplinary learning. So as you just called out, Carnegie Mellon as a whole has a number of leading schools within its overall university umbrella. We want to ensure that our students have that opportunity to engage with all those different populations, both in a curricular and non-curricular way. So for example, our students in the MBA program can take as many electives outside of the Tepper School as they want to supplement that curriculum that they have. But in particular, those classes, you can even take those pass-fail, right? So it's more about you getting that knowledge and challenging yourself rather than trying to say, can I go over to engineering or computer science? And you're likely not going to be setting the curve in the class, right? It's more about giving you that opportunity to be in those environments. On the AI side, because we know this is probably one of those biggest buzzwords right now going around any different news cycle. This is a university-wide initiative. We have experts in a lot of different areas. There will be some things that we're putting out from the school in January. I think actually Post Aquans is doing a big feature and highlight on it. So we're collecting all that and kind of putting that out to just show the ecosystem of that and how we can help lead at the intersection of technology and business with AI. But that's the bigger stuff. I don't know if Hanisha or Rukayat want to jump in with anything from the student perspective.
Yeah, I was going to jump in and add more about how I think a lot of the classes outside of Tepper, of course, the fact that we're able to take those make it very easy for us to be able to understand what is actually going on in the overall sphere when it comes to AI and technology. But a lot of Tepper classes are also now geared to be able to acknowledge and discuss what's happening with AI. And an example of that would be a class that I took recently. It's called Tech and Future of Work, and quite literally talks about how technology will be affecting the labor markets moving forward, and in what capacity will it affect. Do you think automation is going to, degrade the labor workforce in any way, shape, or form? How does that pan across industries? And it's been so interesting because that entire class has just been analytical, looking at all these different aspects, looking at how AI comes into play, and what that's really doing for the workforce. Is it replacing it, or is it actually supplementing it? So I think it's been really exciting to be at the helm of so much exciting stuff that's been going on at Tepper and at CMU.
Rue, sorry, I think you're still muted.
There we go. You see, I need to get used to this technology. You would think I had this up to wraps at this point. But just to introduce myself, hello, everyone. My name is Rukayat. Also, Rue had technical difficulties earlier, graduated from Tepper last year, class of 2023. Just to add my 2 cents to what Hanisha and JR mentioned, I would say for me, sometimes you can get lost in like the technical aspects of school, the MBA program. But what stood out to me in terms of Tepper were 2 different things. One being accelerated leadership program. So when you come into school, of course, you want to pivot to a specific career, but I feel like it's always important to remind yourself to ground yourself in being a leader. And that's how you're going to stand out in whatever profession that you want to go to. So for me, one thing that Tepper has is you can work with a leadership coach in terms of developing yourself as a leader or getting a leadership development certification at the end of your 2 years. Stuff like that is what I believe stood out to me when I was going through the process of, being a student at Tepper. And then third thing is in terms of like entrepreneurship. Came into Tepper, I never, ever saw myself being an entrepreneur. I was like, I'm straight and narrow, 9 to 5. That's going to be my life for the rest of my life. But going to Tepper and taking classes like entrepreneurship through acquisition or franchising, you see like the sky is the limit. And the amount of resources that Tepper has specifically when it comes to entrepreneurship, it just shows you that there's so many avenues of what you can pursue post-MBA.
Nice. I love that. I love that kind of flexibility and that they kind of give you a little bit of everything that you need. Asking the students again, what are some of the other standout unique features of the MBA at Tepper? Maybe like even why you chose this school?
I think Rue answered it perfectly, but doubling down on the ALC for sure. I think the Accelerate Leadership Center has been by far one of the most invigorating experiences I've had at Tepper, and one of the reasons I chose Tepper as well. Just being able to be in a space where there are coaches that are, geared towards helping you understand your leadership and your communication styles and how to essentially build on it has been extremely helpful. We start out with an EQ assessment. They tell you all these little things about yourself of, this is good, this we could work on. And then you sit with them and you quite literally just, discern and talk about how you can be the most effective leader or the kind of leader you want to be. And so just doubling down on what Drew said, I think the Accelerate Leadership Center definitely was one of the more standout features. And then I think one of the other standout unique features of the Tepper MBA that I think was really important in me deciding to come to Tepper was quite literally the small class size. I think it makes it really personal. You get a chance to know everyone. At the end of the day, your MBA can be about a lot of different things, but it ends up being about who your network is. And being able to be in a class where 200 of your classmates are going to be 200 of your closest peers and fellows moving into the future has been an amazing experience to be, going through.
Fantastic.
And I have to agree. One other thing I just wanted to add is in terms of the international opportunities. So my second year of the program, I was able to do travel abroad to Germany. So for a month, was able to take classes at a school in Germany, was able to travel to other countries. We went to Prague, we went to Bratislava, we went to Southern Germany, Eastern Germany. We understand the difference between West and East Germany. So that global perspective is something that I would have never gotten if I never came to Tepper. Do I ever think I would have backpacked Germany for a month by myself to learn about the economics of the country? Probably not. But being able to be a part of Tepper and enjoying that experience is something that is I'm going to be able to take with me for the rest of my life. And it was also a great way to develop my network where I was able to meet professors and business people or even family-owned businesses where we were able to tour their facilities that I would never, had that network before. So it's like, you just don't have a network in Tepper, but you also have a network that's global. So that was something that stood out to me.
That gets me so excited because I'm literally going to Germany in 3 months as well for the same study abroad program. So cannot wait.
Yeah, Rue, you all did a really good job selling because there's a large group going. So I know everyone's excited about that. Let me say one thing just to kind of round this out, because we've talked about this leadership component a few times, and I want to give a little bit more story of the why we've decided to make such a huge focus on that. As we went out to all of our different corporate partners, our alumni, and we really asked that question, who's really making a difference in your companies or organizations? Who's moving up quickly? What really came back was that, having data-informed solutions, having, innovative solutions were now table stakes. Typically, communication leadership was what was really coming back of who was making the biggest difference, because essentially when you do something new and innovative, you have to be able to communicate that to others, all of your different stakeholders. You have to have your team want to follow in that vision that's likely in a different direction that they were going previously. So we really wanted to dive deep both into data-informed decision-making, but in particular that leadership and communication that's going to make every solution much more powerful.
Yeah, sounds like, Tepper is doing many things right with leadership as well as getting people the global perspective. One of the things that our MBA hopefuls always want is understanding the right fit, as well as like what's a part of a great culture for them. We know that even if it's a same school within the same campus or a couple different schools, the culture can be so vital and so different. And understanding that is probably the key for people to get in. So a question to probably Rue first here. What is the culture at Tepper? How would you describe it?
I would describe the culture at Tepper in terms of two different adjectives, I guess, would be just like supportive and inclusive. So when I think of supportive, just to do like a quick antidote, I remember when I came into Tepper, I had an engineering background, came from supply chain, and we had core classes that we had to take, like accounting. I've never taken accounting a day in my life. And I just thought about okay, I'm going to struggle because I'm used to doing things by myself, or I'm used to figuring out things by myself. So to get to that supportive culture, I remember when we first started classes at Tepper for accounting, there'd be people who had their CPA and they didn't even need to take the class. They would host tutor sessions for those who were struggling. So that's the supportive culture that I would say is something that I'm going to have for the rest of my life. And I'm okay, Tepper excelled at. And then when it comes to inclusive culture, just not inclusivity in terms of just diversity weekend and such forth, but inclusivity in terms of different groups merging together. Something that I really enjoyed at Tepper was something called My 15s. So essentially different affinity groups would host sessions where their members would tell their story, their background, how they got to Tepper, or even just a life story. And I remember I was able to attend one for SABA, which is South Asian Business Association. And that's something that I was to learn the trials and tribulations that my peers experience is just something that connects you for the lifetime. And it's that inclusive culture is something that you see is evident throughout the program. So I would say in terms of support and inclusivity, those are the main two things.
Hanisha, do you want to jump on?
Again, I think Rue summed it up perfectly. Definitely agree. And that's something that I can feel in my class as well, right? She was the class before me. It kind of carries forward. But I guess another adjective I'd like to add is also aspirational, which connects really closely to, I know CMU's motto as well of our heart is always in the work. I think across the class that I've been interacting with, the classes before as the classes after us, our alumni, we're all always trying to be better. We're all always working towards being better. And I think that's been something that's been really motivating personally for me to just see people that are so committed to bring about change in so many different aspects of what's going on, right? An example of that would be literally when it comes to being supportive and inclusive. That's something that comes with Tepper, but the conversation is always, how are we more supportive? How can we be more inclusive? How do we bring in more people that are going to help with us understanding certain inclusivity challenges that may be, things that we're facing? And so it's always about being aspirational, being better. which I think has been really exciting for me to watch as well.
So one thing I want to highlight here, which I don't think everyone else does, and we didn't go over intros. The one thing that we try to do with our students is provide these leadership opportunities. Both Hanisha and Rukayat filled a role within our student government, which was essentially like the admissions lead. So I meet with that lead almost like on a weekly or bi-weekly basis. And we talk about what's going on in the program, what is the culture going on, and they help us inform the different types of things that we should be highlighting or setting expectations for candidates. So it really helps us shape that culture going forward. So I always love to hear how one class may be built off of the other class's momentum in certain areas. But in particular, you do really have that opportunity to help shape what the program is going to be in the future in a wide variety of leadership positions. But that was the common thread that connects Hanisha and Rukayat.
And now the common thread is Tepper. And so let's talk about the academics. That's really the heart of the program, right? It's what you go there to learn. And we all know that Tepper, as part of CMU, has some fantastic professors, and faculty are really, again, the heart of the degree, right? So who are some of your star professors these days? What are they working on? What makes them so great?
Okay, I can. Oh, you got it. Okay, I can take it first. For me, the star professor that I feel like was a great time was Meredith Griley. She works in terms of entrepreneurship. She's just a rock star. She had a brewery. She sold it. She's just like someone I want to be when I grow up, is what I like to say. But why I feel like she's a rock star in terms of the things she does is in terms of just like how open she is to discuss like the trials and tribulation when it comes to entrepreneurship. And I think that stood out to me because I've mentioned earlier entrepreneurship. It was just something I never really thought was attainable to me. And going through her courses and her curriculum, she just shows that there's so many, like, entrepreneurship is attainable to anybody. Like, if you have an idea, make sure this is like the backing you need. This is like the development in terms of like market research. This is what you need to look at in terms of like investing and stuff like that. She does a great job of just like breaking it down to like layman terms to help you realize like it's attainable by everybody. And she's just a rock star because she's supportive. She likes to see students excel, and she likes to like continually check up and connect people. I remember one time we had a guest speaker come into the class, and this guest speaker used to work for the company that I work for now. And immediately when she found that out, she wanted to connect us. She told me to get her number. She gave me her email. And like that sense of like ownership and being able to connect with your students and wanting to see your students excel is something that I feel like was very like important.
Okay, so I have some follow-up questions. Like, what's going on? Are you entrepreneur? You're like, what? I don't know what you can share, what you cannot share yet, but whatever you can share, please feel free to. I'm curious, what are you working on? Like, what's
currently,
and how has this kind of incubator or whatever that has supported you in this process? So,
no, currently, what's crazy is that I don't have a creative idea in mind at the current moment. Right now, I'm in consulting in terms of I'm an associate at McKinsey & Company. However, in the future, I do hope to go in terms of franchising, specifically in like in the hair and beauty space. So that's just like, the future, maybe 5-10 years, come back to me and I'll be ready for that in detail, but currently just still in the lookings.
Okay. Yeah. That's what happens. I mean, very often people come to business school, to do an MBA, perhaps with the intention of starting a company. And it's very hard because you're dropping like a couple of coins, right? You drop like several tens of thousands of dollars or euros or whatever it may be. And to start a company, you need capital, you need investorship. And so that's always a big challenge. So I think in my experience, most people who intend to start a company or want to be an entrepreneur, it doesn't usually happen immediately after business school. There's that time period where you're often in the corporate world or working for another startup, and you're learning things, you're repaying your student loans, which is often the situation, building up enough revenue and working that network. And that Carnegie Mellon Tepper network is going to be so central to whatever it is, the creative idea that comes to you. So I will be following you on LinkedIn and it'll keep me posted as that comes. That'd be great. So Hanisha, did you want to piggyback onto that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, Ru took my favorite professor, but that's okay. So Grelly, I 100% agree. Like definitely one of those professors that's all about, connecting you with people, like getting you to understand how important it is to like just build that network. But another professor that I would like to highlight is Branny Avon. She is the associate professor of org behavior and theory at Tepper. And we had exposure to her when we took our first networks class, which was all about looking at networks and organizations. She quite literally had us do a LinkedIn analysis to see how dense our networks were, as well as understand what networks look like within the 200, people class that we had. But at the same time, something I really like about the way she approaches a lot of her research and the way she approaches things is that she also highlights the importance of networking. They highlight like importance of knowing people, is always interested in connecting you to different people. And a lot of her research is so interesting when you look at what she's done in the space of org behavior or just like looking at network relations in general, that it has been very interesting. Every conversation with her goes in like 5,000 different tangents and it's always fascinating. But absolutely love her. There's a lot of professors that we actually really, really love, but I think I want to highlight Brandy Avon for now.
Nice. Thanks.
This is my favorite part of the school episodes, when students come and are so enthused about their programs, and you can see that in their, in their approach to their answers and so on.
Agreed.
So how do people get in there? So looking at the admissions process, what are specific maybe characteristics or who makes a great applicant for Tepper?
Yeah. Do you all want me to take the lead here, and then Rue and Hanisha, you round me out in any way that you need to? So I think, when I give advice to candidates, I think the first thing everybody needs to know is you need to do your own personal reflection. My favorite thing about an MBA is that almost anyone can do it in terms of your background. There's not prerequisites. So it has this like really large funnel on the one side, but then you can do almost anything with an MBA after. So there isn't just one type of candidate that we're looking for. Like we want that diversity in class of thought and experience, etc. So if you can think through, why do you want this MBA? What is that going to help you achieve? And what are some of those experiences that you want to have along the way? You're ready to have a good conversation about an MBA. For us, when we're looking at candidates, and I'll get more specific here to make it more useful, we start with career first. So we want to understand, what do you want to accomplish? Where do you want to go? Because that's typically the main reason why people are coming back. They want to have more career opportunities as they exit this degree. And that is usually going to kind of set that bar of where they, really happy with that degree and with that network and the time and money they spend or not. So we always want to start with what is most important to our candidates and our students. And that's on the career side. We then go into, can you do the academic work? Are you going to be competitive in the classroom? And that's we'll say a little bit more of like the yes or no question, right? In admissions, either you can, be successful in the classroom or you can't. And then the last thing is going to be community. So, based on what I talked about earlier, right? Like everybody can do all these different things with it. You learn so much from your classmates. So we always try to ask that last question for every candidate. What do we think is going to be the impact on our community when you join it? And if the career matches, you can do the work, and we feel like you're going to be a positive add into our community, then typically it's a fit.
Yeah. As a follow-up question to Rue and Hanisha, do you feel that Tepper is more data focused or quant heavy? Because that's also an impression that some of the MBA hopefuls might have.
I can take the lead. So I think it really depends. I think some courses might be more data focused and some are a bit less data focused. And it's also determining like what trajectory you want to go down. So coming with an engineering bachelor's degree, there were areas that I needed improvement in that, was like a core class that you had to take, whether it be like accounting or finance, or even in terms of like probability and statistics. So there are some like data focused areas. However, one thing I like about Tepper is that you can have a concentration. I almost forgot for a second. You can have a concentration where you can tailor your journey at Tepper to what you want it to be focused on. So if you want it to be focused in operations, if you want it to be focused in finance, if you want it to be focused in entrepreneurship, you have the ability to tailor what that looks like. So if you want it to be more quant focused, it can be. And if you want it to be less quant focused, it can be. And I think that flexibility is what people like. But sometimes the idea of just quant scares people off. But just know, I'm also not the best at quant, and I was able to excel at Tepper.
I 100% agree with that. Oh, I'm sorry. I think I cut you off.
No, that's so reassuring to hear.
No, I 100% agree with that. I was going to say the same thing of, I think your first year of core classes helps you decide what you're interested in a way, by giving you a good breadth of different classes to take. Like Rue mentioned, stats and probability, finance, you're looking at some marketing classes, you're looking at operations, optimization. And then your second year of classes is basically a lot of electives where you get to choose and make your own Tepper journey. But then on top of concentrations, you also have the ability to choose a track, which is an even more specialized version of what you may want to do. So an example of that would be people that are specifically looking to be in tech strategy or product management can quite literally choose an optional tech strategy and product management track, where they get to take all of these classes that are geared towards that particular area, where some of them are going to be more quant focused, some of them are going to be less, but it helps you optimize in that way to be able to understand what's important for the journey you want to pursue. And then also through different capstones, and this is an idea of like when you don't want to go down the quant route. So for a lot of people that are pursuing consulting, for instance, right now, they want to take classes that are more strategy oriented, more strategy heavy. And so what they're specifically focusing on with a lot of their classes are looking at the strategy classes, but then also with their capstones, they're going into what is called an SME capstone, where they get to work with consulting companies real time and get an idea of what that looks like, instead of going down, again, that very data driven quant heavy route. So to Rue's point, you can really optimize it, and you have a lot of flexibility to make it the kind of journey you want it to be.
All right, so we're going to take that word quant, and coming back to the admissions question where we originally were, quant is that part of the GMAT that drives fear into the hearts of many. For other people, it's the verbal section. I think it's very personal. It may have to do with where you come from or the career field you have. Testing in general has been turned on its head, especially in the last couple of years. And on top of that, both the two major tests, the GMAT and the GRE, have totally transformed. So we have, for those listening out there, you probably have heard of the Focus Edition, which is the new version of the GMAT, came out last month. The new version of the GRE came out in September. So there's both of these tests, which are kind of cornerstones for most schools in admissions, have changed. In addition, the TOEFL has had a bit of a transformation as well. So I want to ask that admissions question. How important is testing to the admissions process with Tepper? And going back to Krithika's, I think what she was alluding to with Tepper at CMU, which is a school known for all things tech, engineering, and AI now and so forth. Does that mean that's even more of an important factor, having a strong quant score? So it was kind of a long question, but I think you got it, JR. You want to take that off?
Yeah, no, I got it. And if you need to ask me any follow-ups, if I don't capture it all, let me know. So for every single program we have a test waiver option. I think that this is where you, like you had said, if you go back 5 years before pandemic, probably almost every program required it. It was just the gauntlet that every candidate needed to go through. That is no longer the case. There are ways that obviously we can assess candidates. So we can definitely do that. So it is not a requisite. It will not, and I say it in this way. We simply just take that data point out if you choose to go the waiver route to look at an admissions decision as well as scholarship. So it doesn't affect you in that way. My strong advice for candidates, though, in this period at this point would be like, this is where you need to have honest self-reflection of when you look at yourself. Because how do I want to say it? So like, do you have a profile that you can get a test waiver that will not affect, and we'll even say in this way, like the scholarship, right? Because a lot of times you can prove yourself of saying that I can do the coursework, but when you're looking at that program school, and this is not just for us, but this is for any different school, if you take that piece out, how competitive are the rest of your data points? So what does your resume look like? What are your work experience? How much do you want to pivot? what does that undergraduate GPA look like? For U.S. schools, it's those on a 4.0 scale that we have to put in our profile. But overall, we're still looking at that for candidates to help, look at competitiveness to the pool. So it's not always so much of, can I get the waiver? But every candidate asks about scholarship, right? They want to maximize that ROI. So it's not just a binary question, like a yes, no, like, can you get the waiver approved? But is it the right choice for every candidate? We don't need a test. I would say, like, to candidates in particular, like you said about our quant reputation, it doesn't bother me when a candidate doesn't have a test. It's pretty easy to make a decision on it. That doesn't mean it's the right choice for every candidate.
Nice. It lines up very much with what I say to my clients, as an admissions consultant, that if other aspects of your profile will compensate or make up for the lack of a score, if you show strength in other areas in your experience, if you've had great leadership opportunities, maybe as an entrepreneur, if you've started a company or two, if you've had great grades at undergrad and university, these things can definitely all counterbalance the lack of a GMAT score or GRE score. Yep. Great. Good to know.
Yeah. Moving on to another important area. What are some of the main industries that Tepper grads specialize in? Probably I'll throw this to Ru first, being the current alum.
No, that is perfectly fine. So I would say the three largest areas are consulting, tech, and finance. Specifically for me, I went down the consulting route. And when I came to Tepper, I was deciding between like product management and consulting. But I think in terms of like the interactions that I made in terms of like the people, the Master's Career Center, I saw that I was more aligned to go with consulting post-grad, and was luckily able to find a full-time job offer post-grad. And also I was able to get an internship while I was at Tepper my first year.
I agree to that. I would also like to say, though, that I think a trend that we've been noticing with my class is that people are also starting to go more towards healthcare. And there's a bigger pull for healthcare that's happening within, the class that we have with the companies that are coming. So would definitely add that to one of the other main industries. I did not go into any of these main industries. I'm trying to go into media and entertainment, which is a completely different thing. My internship was with Warner Brothers. So definitely very different from most Tepper MBA grads. But if you're looking for generally consulting, tech, and finance, and even healthcare for that matter, then Tepper would be the place for you to go.
And let me add a little bit of context here as well, because I think this is helpful. So if you look at Tepper, if you go back 3 years, tech and consulting were about even at about a third of the class each. Over the last few years, and this was just a function of hiring trends, and also consulting taking over outside of a few outlier type of roles and positions, like the top salaries. Consulting has been upping their salary every year significantly. That's also why you see almost every program's average salary for graduates going up over the last 3 years. So part of this is looking at trends. And I also bring that up because when Hanisha brought up healthcare, if you look at our career reports, like everybody follows this MBA CSE standard, so everybody can have an apple-to-apple comparison. But if you don't know much about it, it's hard to follow. So if you look at ours, it'll say like healthcare and biotech at like 4%. So many people went into healthcare consulting because the offers were so different over the last few years that we actually have quite a few more people going into that space. But if you look at the career report, you wouldn't know that unless you talk to someone. So I guess that's my also plug of look at that for good questions and then reach out to current students, alumni, and my team to get a little bit more context behind the reports.
That's quite exciting. Does Pittsburgh have something to do with this, like more in terms of the focus towards healthcare?
Yeah, so a little bit. So the quick story on Pittsburgh. So we were previously an industrialized city. A lot of things got offshored. Pittsburgh had to go through a renaissance, which turned into being tech and healthcare. The two universities in Pittsburgh really helped drive that. Carnegie Mellon more on the technical side. University of Pittsburgh has a huge medical school and also its own kind of medical company called UPMC. So it helped drive those two things together. So I think there's an ecosystem here for that. But I would also tell you, very few of our graduates will stay in Pittsburgh. Like this is a really nice stop for 2 years to live in an affordable, large city and then go off to wherever you want. So even though the ecosystem for healthcare is here, I wouldn't say everybody that wants healthcare is not staying here in the Pittsburgh area. They're typically going to those normal spots of Boston, DC, New York, West Coast, etc.
So I wanted to get into while we're talking about Pittsburgh. What is it like there? I've never been to Pittsburgh. I've been to Pennsylvania a lot growing up in Long Island. I've been all over the East Coast, up and down the coast, but never really to Pittsburgh. How's life there?
I think Pittsburgh is a city that you can fall in love with if you have the right people around you, for sure. And I think that's what my experience with the Tepper MBA has been, to like just be exploring a lot of different things here with the right people. Also, as JR mentioned, extremely affordable. So when you're going into an MBA program and you know there is a lot of money going on your wallet, it's definitely helpful to be in Pittsburgh from that perspective. And it also has its own small, unique little culture where we refer to people as yinzers. There's a lot of like different slangs you have. And it's just like, it feels very homely in a lot of different ways. But definitely, as JR mentioned, a good quick pit stop is what I would say it is. A good quick pit stop that you won't forget.
And just to add like to what Hanisha said, I remember when I first came to Pittsburgh and I was telling people I moved, they were like, oh, so how is that next to Philadelphia? And I'm like, no, Pittsburgh is on the other side of the state. I always get that every time I mention moving to Pittsburgh. But my time there, I would say it was great. I feel like there's a lot of quirky things for Pittsburgh. Like there's a pickle festival that they have every year. There's like pickle beer. They close out one of the bridges that connects the different sides of Pittsburgh. Some random things that go on in Pittsburgh. There's a lot of different nuances that people enjoy. And during my time there that I started to pick up on myself. And then also one thing I would say about like Pittsburgh can be two different things. Sometimes it's a quick stop for some people. I ended up moving to Atlanta, but there's also a stop that people stay there long term. I have a handful of classmates who stayed in Pittsburgh post-graduation. They're having a great time. And I think it's also a good opportunity because since they had that previous relationship during our program, there's like a network of people they can rely on that they knew stayed in Pittsburgh post. So you already have that network and you don't have to meet new people, especially when you're moving to a new city. So I think there's like pros and cons and you find people on both ends of the spectrum.
Now, are you guys both originally from the States or are you from different countries?
So I'm originally from Maryland.
I'm from India, New Delhi, so the capital.
Okay. And so let me ask you, Hanisha, are you planning on sticking around in the US post MBA or going back to India?
For a little bit, for sure. I do want to stay here for a little bit and be able to explore the opportunities that I want to explore in media and entertainment, considering some of the biggest studios we have in the world are, in the United States. So that's why I want to be here for a little bit. But long term, I do want to be back in India.
So you're going to pick up some of the American Hollywood stuff and bring it back to Bollywood? Is that what I'm hearing?
We'll see if that happens. But definitely want to get more exposure because I'm looking to be a marketing professional, specifically focusing on franchises. I think franchises are not big in Bollywood as of yet, and I know there's a big push to pull that in. So that's one of the things I want to explore. Also want to explore how technology is intersecting with a lot of what's happening in media and entertainment. And so we'll see in what ways I'm able to, bring that back to India. But it's more so of, I think I want to just be here to be able to get the experience. And then I want to go back because I want to be in India long-term with my family.
Sure. That's usually the case for most people, I think. And then, Jay, let me ask you in the bigger picture, for international students who are candidates, MBA hopefuls listening out there, what percentage of them usually stick around if you have that kind of data after Tepper?
Yeah, so I would say, so if I think through the class, if we go over our percentages, our international students are placed at an extremely high rate here in the US. It's at the same percentage rate really as our overall class. Now, just like other top programs, we have a number of sponsored candidates, whether it's by home country or company. And those aren't really seeking, right, because the company or country paid for the MBA, so they're going back to make an impact. But those that are searching for jobs, 95% find employment here in the US. So we do pretty well in that regard.
That's very cool. And speaking about employment, I mean, what really helps is having a school as an alum with a really supportive career services team. So tell us about this career services at Tepper. Like, what can graduates expect in terms of employment opportunities? Like, we already kind of talked about like locals versus from abroad, but a little bit more in general. What do career services provide for Tepper alum and current students?
Okay, I can get us started.
Sure.
So for me, like, there's an abundant amount of resources that sometimes it can be a bit overwhelming, but specifically with the career services team, I think they were very pivotal for me when I came into the program because I was pretty unsure on what I wanted to do post MBA. I was one of those people who came in just said, I want to pivot, but I don't know what I want to pivot to. And I think they do a good job understanding like your goals and aspirations and helping provide guidance in terms of these are the opportunities post grad. For instance, when we came in, there was resume reviews where we went through the resume. I remember when I applied to my MBA program, I thought, oh, my resume is perfect at this point. I applied to 10 different MBA programs. What else can I need to perfect with my resume? But lo and behold, when I met with my MCC advisor, there was things that could be changed. So activities like that was very crucial for me. We were able to like mock interviews with our MCC advisors, which was just a way for us to get a better understanding of like what to expect when you have behavioral interviews specifically. And I thought that was very useful. But outside of that, there's so many different things that is hosted by MCC. So there's different workshops in terms of getting yourself ready for your career post-grad. Another activity that the MCC department did also was that they understood that we had a mixture of international and domestic students. They also they also filtered which companies are doing sponsorship and which companies are not. And I think that's very important for people as they navigate, what company they're interested in post-grad. And then lastly, just one more other thing in terms of MCC, I think they also do a great job in terms of the company sessions that they host. So I used to work with the MCC as well as a student worker, and seeing the diversity and the different companies that they bring to campus. It's not just focused on consulting, finance, and tech. Like there's healthcare, there's let's say venture capitalist firms that they bring. So there's so many different things that they bring to the campus as well to make sure they cater to all the students' needs. I know there was a lot. I'm going to take a step back.
I'm happy to hear it. So that's as an alum. What about as a current student, Hanisha?
Absolutely. I think a lot of it is the same where they're actively like working to make sure that you are in the best position that you can be to be able to, reach out to different people. But I guess one of the things I want to specifically highlight in my experience with the MCC is that they've really focused on lowering the barriers between how intimidating networking sounds versus what it's actually supposed to be. And that truly comes from the perspective of looking at some of my other, international student peers, where internationally networking isn't really a concept, or small talk isn't really that much of a concept. It's something that people really struggle with when they come here, because they're just like, how are we supposed to, talk about these things? How are we supposed to make it sound less transactional? How are we supposed to reach out to the right people and build onto those conversations? And I think that MCC has done a really good job of being able to take down those barriers, being able to help students develop individual networking strategies with whatever they're trying to go for, really help you connect with some of the leaders, alumni, peers in the industries that you're trying to focus on, and make sure that you have access to as many resources as possible to redefine your career path or to go down the specific career path that you want to go down. And so I feel like it's been a really good experience overall with the MCC. And I would also like to highlight that a lot of our clubs on campus as well have this different structure where they're helping out with, if you specifically want to focus on consulting, for instance, the MCC is going to be supporting you, but then we also have the Tepper Consulting Club, which helps you redefine the timeline of consulting, since it does start much earlier than other timelines we have for other industries, helps you understand what are some good touch points, literally takes you through casing step by step. And so you have the MCC as a resource, you have clubs as a resource, you have the Accelerate Leadership Center as a resource. And so from that perspective, you end up getting a very holistic overview of how to go into whatever industry you want to step into, how to shape your career.
Brilliant. I love it. I think we have time for one more question, Krithika, if you want to take that.
Yeah, I know that both Hanisha and Ru were referring to the alumni. How strong has been their support in your journey so far?
I can speak to it first as a current student that continuously reaches out to alumni a lot. So I guess a good way of putting it would be, so as I mentioned, over the summer, I was at Warner Brothers and I was doing my internship there. I had over 90 coffee chats, but literally 15 of them were with alumni who, the minute I reached out to them, were just so excited to have me be a part of that company and immediately wanted to talk to me. This was people that had graduated all the way from like 1995 to 2014. And it was so exciting to be talking to them, sharing their journeys, having them give me real-time advice of how to, kind of shape my career in media and entertainment. And so that's an example of how strong our alumni network is in terms of no matter where you go, Tepper alumni are always willing to take you with them. They're willing to handhold, and they're willing to just help you explore whatever you need to explore. And another example would also just be, I know for a fact that when I was transitioning into the admissions role, I reached out to Ru quite a bit. We were connecting over a lot of different things. It's one of those things of you develop the kind of relationships and network where you can reach out to this person whenever. And that's the kind of thing I have with Ru, but also like a lot of the class before me where they're alumni, but they're people that you can reach out to whenever you want for whatever you want. And they will always be there to help you out with it.
Also really good to hear.
And just to add on to that, as a current alumni as well, I think exactly what Hanisha said is like on point in terms of what actually occurs at Tepper. I think in terms of Tepper, we have like a smaller student community, so it helps with creating stronger bonds with the faculty and the student population. So it helps when you're reaching out to people, even after you graduate. You might be reaching out to alumni who graduated 5-10 years from you, from when you graduated, and that network is there. I will say that as alumni now, is the focus is always just giving back to the community. Just within like the past 6 months or 7 months of graduating, I already talked to like current students who are navigating consulting and need advice. And when you see those things, you like kind of drop everything and help, because you just want to pass like the torch along, because the support I got from the alumni is the same type of support I want to give to current students. And I see that amongst all the alumni, people who graduated, is like they want to see Tepper students excel within the program, and then also when they graduate from the program. Just to like quickly do one quick anecdote. I had an alumni, his name was Nuba. He graduated a year before me. I started at McKinsey this past August, and Nuba I hadn't talked to in about like 6 months, or maybe even up to a year at this point. I just pinged him on Slack like, "Hi Nuba, I just joined the forum. Would you mind like taking a few minutes to chat with me?" And immediately he was like, "Yes, of course." And that just shows you that alumni network and that support is always there. It never ends. Even if it's been 5 months to 5 years that you spoke to someone, they're always willing to support you.
That's a great story right there. JR, do you want to add something in terms of what do you like about your alumni the most?
Yeah, so in my role, what's really interesting is like I get to see all different levels of alums, right? Like the young alums a couple years out, those that are kind of like mid-career, and then I just started interacting with what we call our board of advisors. So like, for example, the namesake of our school is still alive, and he's still very active in helping us shape the future of the school. So we have him and like the CFO of Amazon and others that are on the board. So all of our alumni in different ways are extremely still active and integrated with the school. And one thing that's interesting, so because this is something that both Rukayat and Hanisha and I worked on, we have a number of alums that really wanted to help drive admissions forward for the MBA. And it was a lot of people that were like a managing director at McKinsey, or like this level that we thought was going to be really exciting for candidates. And we had them start reaching out to people after they got admitted. And then some of the candidates were like, I don't know if I'm ready to talk to like the managing director, right? At like where I want to work yet. Like I'm a little intimidated by that. So I think what's really awesome is that everybody really wants to help in whatever capacity that they have. But even in that case, like when I had to go back to that group and said, I don't know if they're ready to talk to you, they said, well, how else can we help, right? Like there was no one was offended. No one was like, well, I will spend my time elsewhere. The question always is, well, then tell me what I can do. So for me, like it's been awesome being part of such a supportive community. And truthfully, it just makes everyone's experience just that much better.
That's great. That obviously speaks to the quality of the experience they had, and that they're willing and able to give back. And that just, it's a cyclical phenomenon. That's wonderful. Well, you guys are doing something great over there in Pittsburgh. I'm really happy to hear all this, and I'm really glad to have met you today. that unfortunately is all the time we have for today on MBA Waves. So thank you to all the guests. Thank you, of course, my co-host Krithika for joining us today. And please don't forget to give us a like if you enjoyed this week's episode, and be sure to click subscribe to stay on top of tons of free tips and get up and close and personal with all the world's top ranked business schools. For the upcoming schedule, check out MBAwaves.com, and see you next Tuesday. Bye-bye.